Friedrich Husler was one of the leading voice pedagogues. He started off life in Utah, Salt Lake City. His father sold farm machinery to the Mormons who were living there. And his father died when he was 6. And his mother brought him and his brother back to Munich because she wanted them to have a German education. And he was a cellist, he was a great athlete. And then at a certain point, very early on, I think he was 19, he decided he wanted to sing. And he didn't just want to sing, he wanted to be a tenor because they made a lot of money. And he went to the leading voice teachers in Munich at the time, and they said, forget it, you've got no voice. You haven't any talent for singing whatsoever. And that just made him all the more stubborn. And so he decided he'd have to teach himself. And he got a book by Garcia, who was Manuel Garcia, the Spanish singing pedagogue in the 1800s. And he studied that, and he taught himself to sing. And he emerged as a very, very accomplished heroic tenor, to the point where, I think he was 22 or 23, Bruno Walter, who was the conductor, wanted to take him on tour with him around the world singing Othello. He didn't have a performer's personality. He didn't have the elbows. He did some auditions. He auditioned at Bayreuth for Wagner's Son, got the part, and then didn't do it. He backed out. And began teaching very early on, and established a reputation very, very quickly as a wonderful voice teacher, and really a voice builder. And with Klemperer, the conductor Klemperer, in the 1920s, he ran the Kroll Opera in Berlin, which was famous for its ensemble. In the war, he was a conscientious objector, the Second World War, and was kind of under house arrest near Hanover in a village in his house there, which he built. Stayed there during the war, wrote a philosophical book called The Complete Instrument about his philosophy about singing. And then after the war was invited to form the voice department at Detmold Academy of Music, which is one of the famous music academies in Germany, and taught there. And hundreds of singers emerged worldwide. And perhaps one of his most famous tenors was Sándor Kónya, the Hungarian tenor. And retired and moved to Switzerland, to Lugano, and a singing school sprung up around him there. And that's where I met him the last 2 years of his life. I went from Canada to study with him, having heard a pupil of his, and she sang 2 notes, and I knew I had to study with her teacher. Didn't know him, didn't know anything about him, and decided I was going, and 2 years later I went, and it was a success. And I've stayed in Europe ever since. But he gave me in that 2-year period a lifetime of material to work with. I couldn't always find it during my career. I had trouble finding what he taught me. And over the last 40 years, I found it. So anyway, that's Husler.
How did you find it, personally?
Studying the Alexander technique was a big help. Doing a lot of therapy. Coming to terms with the losses in my life that were preventing me emotionally from accepting the loss of him when I needed him. Those were the 2 main things. And just constant belief that what he had taught me was right. I never gave up on it. And it's just a continual voyage of discovery. Still going on. And he always said in the lessons, even the very first lesson, everything is there. It's all there. And then the German phrase, es kommt schon, it'll come soon. It's coming, it's coming. Yeah. And his idea was that it was all there, and if anything wasn't working, it was because A, it hadn't been properly trained, or B, and this was most of the cases, something was interfering with it. And you remove the interference, and then the thing emerges. And that's also the Alexander technique principle, that the balance is there, just don't interfere with it. When you stop pulling down, your body goes up. And so my work for the last 40 years has been putting those 2 disciplines together. Husler believed that we have here a singing instrument. It's not just a speech instrument. And he came to that conclusion when he examined the voice and all its parts, all the whole body, that it only all works together when you sing. And so if all the parts are there for singing and you only use a bit of them when you speak, well then it's a singing instrument. And he believed everybody could sing. Talent aside, motivation aside, desire aside, he believed that everybody could sing, and that in fact that was our first communication, was sound before words. The words came later. The sound execution, the primitive sound execution, is much more oriented with the ear and the lower brain. They're linked. And that later, as we evolved the eye and the hand, as we named mine, and the intellect grew, we got away from the ear, and his whole idea was that we had to get back to the ear in order to make the sound. You use the intellect to interpret, but you use the ear and the basic to make the basic sound, and that's connected very much with the primitive emotions. And a lesson with him was a whole exercising of the full range of all your emotions. Each sound, each technical sound that he wanted you to make had its own emotion. So at the end of 20-minute lesson, and they were quite short, but every day, you'd gone through all your emotions. It was like the most wonderful therapy, in a very positive sense.
Wow, how does he do that?
Well, he would just demonstrate. I mean, there's certain aspects. The chest voice muscle comes in through a sort of sob or a cry, and the head voice is through that sort of loving, warm sound, and then all the range of stuff in between. Anger. He would demonstrate. He would demonstrate the sound, and you just sang it after him till you got in your ear what the sounds were of the various parts of the voice. And you got your knowledge from within rather than him saying what. But if you asked him a question, he was very explicit.